wait. Just wait. We need off-street parking.
I'd like to welcome you all here. 4 o'clock on the high. At this point, I would like to read any person wishing to appeal any decision made to the planning board with respect to any matter considered at such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for the such purposes may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceeding is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. Florida Statute 286.105, persons with disabilities in requiring accommodations in order to participate in this meeting should contact the city clerk's office at 329-0100 at least 24 hours in advance to request accommodations. Now we'll do the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Please stand. Mayor Hill, would you do the invocation, please?
You all bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you right now, asking you to watch over this board as they continue to make decisions that benefit all the citizens of this community. We ask that all decisions be made with clarity and conviction, and that they're done according to your will. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
If you would join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, at this time, we'll have the swearing in of the new planning board member, Caitlin E. Owens.
Caitlin, repeat after me. I, Caitlin E. Owens,
I, Caitlin E. Owens,
a planning board appointee of the Palatka City Commission,
a planning board appointee of the Palatka City Commission.
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully perform
Do solemnly swear that I will, that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office
and will support and honor to the best of my ability
and will support and honor to the best of my ability
as all the beliefs, vision, mission, policies, procedures
of all the belief, vision, mission, policies, procedures,
codes of ethics and codes of conduct
codes of ethics, and code of conduct
of the City of Palatka Planning Board.
of the City of Palatka Planning Board.
I hereby, through this oath, affirm that I will perform the duties of this public trust
I hereby, through this oath, affirm that I will perform the duties of this public trust
in a fair and equitable
in a fair and equitable
and ethical manner,
and ethical manner,
befitting the dignity and responsibilities
befitting the dignity and responsibilities
of the office.
of the office.
I'm gonna ask where you got that, Sonny, because I think now you're gonna have to get everybody else on the board to take the same oath, so I don't think anybody else has.
That, we've already commented on that, city manager. We were like, we didn't know nothing about that.
Treated like little stepchildren.
Sonny, if you would call roll, please.
George Deloach is not present. Chase Barnes.
Here.
Don Ross. Here. Earl Wallace.
Here.
Ed Killebrew.
Here.
Edie Wilson.
Here,
Jamila Theobald. Not present. Reno Fells. Not present. Caitlin E. Owens.
Here.
That is the roll call at this time.
Thank you. I'd just like to take this time also just to ask everybody that's around and out there listening to us that you just keep George, our chairman, George Deloach, in your prayers as he's out sick right now.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, if I could, I'd also like to make an introduction.
Yes, sir.
Right here, we have with us today our new planning director for the city of Palatka, which is Ms. Bernadette Fisher. She's seated at the end here. So she's comes to us with quite a bit of experience in the field of planning and zoning. About half of that time in the public sector and about half of that time in the private sector, which was very important to me. So we have somebody who has some experience from the private side who has dealt with the public side from the side of a citizen and landowner and developer. So that she's had both sides of the equation. She comes to us from Central Florida, moving to our area, and we're really pleased to have her. So,
welcome.
Welcome. Nice to meet you. Now I would ask for the motion for approval of minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
September 17th, is that what we're doing?
I'm sorry. Yeah, approval of minutes for the special call meetings on September the 17th for the planning board.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now I'd like to take this time to open the meeting to the public for public comments. Public comments are available in person or by calling in at 386-329-0100, extension 0, or by using the YouTube live chat features. Speakers, please limit your time to 3 minutes.
Got 2 calls on the line already. You got 1 in the chat. So all you have to do in order to get those calls is just
Press 1.
press the line that's flashing.
Okay. You're live. You have a comment?
Yes, my name's John Boat, 220 South 4th Street. That's in reference to PB 20-04, change of the municipal code. We already have a process available to homeowners to address these residential changes. The code on a case-by-case request. And the historic district started with approval to the historical board for a certificate of appropriateness. And through the permit process, and you have to do the zoning board of appeals. Now, if someone's circumvented these procedures in hopes to beg forgiveness instead of ask permission, I'm sorry. I don't think that the city of Palatka has the time, labor, or money to waste on something we already have in place. And that will wrap it up, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Could you give me your name and your address, please?
Yes, I'm watching your Zoom and I'm behind, I guess, on what's showing there, but you're ready for me. I want to thank all of you for your presence today and service to the veterans of the city. I'm Pam Garrett, and I live in Flagler County. My family has owned commercial property in the city at 110 Highway 19 South since 1977. I previously lived at 603 Emmett Street in the South Historic District for 3 years, which my family purchased in 1991. My mother and father restored it to its current uses of B&B as the Grand Gables Inn by its current owners who purchased it in 2016. I have followed and written emails to Mr. Holmes and talked with him about parking code enforcement issues during August and September of 2020. And I've copied other city employees who are responsible for the code enforcement. I'm speaking, I'm going to stop here a second from my whole speech. I'm addressing more specifically this code change or new code for the parking in the historic areas. And I will continue, so I'll give you that little bit of background. I was born and raised in Palatka and always seek resolution that presents it in its best light. Citizens should realize that prospective property owners and visitors are not coming to see strip malls or seek the hottest shopping in North Florida. They are coming to partake of its unique river beauty, terrain, historic treasures, and friendly people. Unfortunately, property owners in the historic area report that prospective buyers come through looking to purchase one of the historic homes, but leave appalled at the lack of code enforcement and blight concerning these irreplaceable historic treasures. I have researched what is usual and customary practices in progressive cities seeking renewal and preservation of their historic areas and districts. Where residential parking is needed in their historic areas by homeowners or guests, it is addressed by allowing parking on the street along the curb. Parking is not aesthetically pleasing or allowed on the right-of-way, being the grassy area between the curb and sidewalk. Concrete parking pads are not allowed in front of homes. Examples of best practice parking in historic districts can be seen in the nation's oldest city, in Florida. Another issue that comes to mind that I've witnessed in the South Historic District specifically is vehicles, boats, skiffs, etc., parked in the front yards of historic homes. This is an extremely offensive practice. Code should not allow the parking of such or work vehicles on residential property or the right-of-way. The owners of such work and recreational vehicles should be required to find parking and storage in an appropriate facility. This is an extremely offensive practice. Such occurrences present Palatka in the worst manner and elicit negative views and comments from many visitors and those seeking to buy historic or other properties. Residents of the historic area give witness to these negative comments by visitors who summarily exit. With these code enforcement issues and non-conforming accepted parking practices, Palatka will never be viewed in a positive light regarding the presentation of its historic resources. A city's lack of action to renew these resources speaks loudly to all that is not important to its leadership and citizens who will not speak up. With the best practices concerning parking utilized, Palatka would become a more walker-friendly city in all areas, especially the historic areas and districts. This would enhance the great amount of money and time that is about to be spent on revitalizing St. John's Avenue in the downtown city core to make it more walker-friendly. I would strongly implore all of you on this board and city officials involved with zoning or code enforcement issues to read the guidelines for residential new construction and historic districts by the Secretary of the Interior, Standards for Historic Preservation and Rehabilitation. These guidelines are the Bible for best practices in a city like Palatka, whose real treasure is in its historic resources. As they say in the current vernacular, this is the money for downtown Palatka. There are many aspects to the best practices of historic preservation. All boards and city officials absolutely need to research and understand the best practices advocated by the Secretary of the Interior of the United States. Then they need to apply them as they are in the great historic cities of America. Palatka must aspire to be one of those cities. With your generous gift of time and effort, this can be accomplished, visible, and appreciated by all who live, visit, and come to invest in its bright future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
There's a call on line 1.
You're live. You've got comments for the planning board?
Yeah.
Your name and address?
I'm sorry?
Name and address, please.
I'm leaving it, my comments on YouTube online. So if you could just, read those off, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Read the comments at this time.
There's a few comments on YouTube right now, I believe from Mr. Harwell. He has several on here, actually. First one being, I believe this change was prompted by the property owners in the South Historic District by being given the impression that they could have parking pads in the ROW. This was during the new stormwater system and the reconfiguration of the streets. The historic districts and the other residential districts in town have all been functioning with no issues. Replying to the South Historic District, the parking was never a problem until someone was given the impression that they could have parking pads in the right of way. This, of course, is not allowed, and for a very good reason. These properties have been around for nearly 100 years with no issues. Now, because of the impression given, we seem to have developed an issue. It seems that if it were a problem for the property owners, it would have developed prior to them purchasing the property. Now we are looking into allowing right-of-way parking for limited properties throughout the city. This is going to create more issues that the city doesn't need. Our municipal code, like most cities around Florida, are pretty much the same as it pertains to off-street parking in residential districts. It is very restrictive and for a good reason. Even the parking on the private residential property has stringent rules for where you can park your vehicles. Having less stringent rules for the right-of-way than you have for private property just doesn't make sense. It ain't broke, so let's not fix it.
I have no idea what was just said.
None. Are there more comments in the YouTube? Are they actually saying that on YouTube, or is that Somebody reading that from.
I have no idea. I assume that was Courtney reading. Is that what that was?
Yes, sir, it was. That was the rest of, for the public comment for that previous call that you just had.
Courtney, we can't hear. We heard very little of what you just said. So I don't know. I heard what you just said just now. You explained what you had been reading, but when you were reading, we heard very little of it. So I don't know if it's our connection or if you were.
If the planning board will allow, I don't mind reading them again.
Just hold on a minute, okay, please? You gonna print it? We're gonna print them right now, and then they can be read in here, and that way it'll be it. Then they can.
Are we jumping around? Because we were, 20-3 was first,
We're
and
on public comment.
These are public
it
comments.
doesn't matter what they talk about.
They can talk about whatever they want to, but
Okay.
there's really nothing else
Comment, Donovan.
that they're addressing, other than an update on what's gonna happen in the future, but they're still entitled to talk, so.
Okay.
I thought I was getting senile for a minute. I appreciate
I'm
you.
not gonna make any comment for all I'm saying.
I was gonna say that for Mr. Holmes.
Okay, I mean, just don't wanna duplicate, but what's the phone amount now? All right, so you wanna read some of the ones that
Everything's
you
different.
got already, but just don't wanna duplicate when Jonathan brings them in writing, okay?
Shall I read the ones from Tony Harwell specifically?
Sure, identify who it's from, and then you
That's
can
why
read.
we're doing it.
I'm reading the public comments into the record from Mr. Tony Harwell, 215 Dodge Street. Mr. Harwell said, I believe that this change was prompted by the property owners in the South Historic District by giving the impression that they could have parking pads in the ROW. This was during the new stormwater system and the reconfiguration of the streets. The historic districts and other residential districts in town have all been functioning with no issues. Regarding the South Historic District, the parking was never a problem until someone was given the impression that they could have parking pads in the ROW. This, of course, is not allowed and for very good reason. These properties have been around for nearly 100 years with no issues. Now, because of the impression given, we seem to have developed an issue. It seems that if it were a problem for the property owners, it would have developed prior to them purchasing the property. Now we're looking into allowing the ROW parking for limited properties throughout the city. This is going to create more issues that the city doesn't need. Our municipal code, like most cities around Florida, are pretty much the same as it pertains to the off-street parking in residential districts. It is very restrictive and for a good reason. Even the parking on the private residential property has stringent rules for where you can park your vehicles. Off-street parking has occurred in the city since the invention of the automobile. The city has encouraged parking in the ROW, and it is much preferred by most as opposed to parking in the narrow street that makes it difficult to pull out of the driveway. End of comment.
Okay. Have another one?
The next comment is from Roberta Correa. As a 13-year resident of the South Historic District, I agree that the ROW parking is not warranted across the board and only should be approved on a case-by-case basis. End of comment.
Any others? Any others?
I don't see any at this time. Courtney, is there any more?
So what does ROW stand for?
Right of way.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Russo just made another Mr. Harwell, I'm sorry, made another comment. The folks commenting on this issue that are opposed to the off-street parking either do not live in Palatka, Pam Garris, or continually park in the ROW themselves.
Okay.
Any further comment? Okay, at this time, hearing no further comment, I close the public comment. And moving on to public hearings, we've got case, PB case PB 20-30, request to annex approximately 1 acre of property into the city, amend the future land use map from Putnam County Urban Reserve, UR, to the city of Palatka, RL, and rezone from Putnam County Agriculture to the city of Palatka, R1A. The location is at 2702 Cecile Avenue, Palatka, Florida, 32177. Applicant Herbert and Vicky Colbert. I'm looking at you now.
Hello, Bernadette Fisher again. For the record, the Building and Zoning Department. The property that is before you today is basically requesting an annexation as well as a land use change. And if you would see, it's approximately an acre of land. It's north of Cecilia, east of Westover Drive, and west of McClellan Street. And they are requesting to change the zoning of the property from residential, I apologize, from the land use, from urban services, which is in the county, to residential, which is the city's zoning designation, and also the land use going from agricultural to single family. The property is consistent with the zoning code as well as the policies in the comprehensive plan. So staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Is there anybody here that would want to speak to that?
I just have a question concerning that.
Come to the podium. State your name and address, please.
I'm Herbert Colbert, 2702 Cecile Avenue.
Can you ensure the microphone's turned off, please?
It's on.
I was gonna make the request, we just want to get tied into the city for sewer purposes and so forth. But are there any restrictions that I need to know of? I mean, such as, I know it's saying going from urban to city, like gardening or anything like that, but are there any restrictions on what can and can't be done from the county to the city? Just for the record, because I really haven't had a garden before now. Just as I got older, all my siblings are starting to do them. They're trading off with each other about everybody's garden. And they say, why don't you do one? And I say, well, I don't even know.
This is a 0.36 acre parcel, right? This is a third of an acre?
Yeah, 3/4 of an acre.
Yeah, 0.36 is a little over a third,
A little over a third of an acre is what we're showing.
what we're showing, yeah.
So and the only reason I asked the question was because I just, if you're talking about a residential garden at your house, we have no prohibitions against that.
That's all it would be, trust me.
You don't plan on supplying public, huh?
No,
All right.
no, just want to know if I'll be able to do something like that. Not putting up any fences for cattle or anything like that. Just want to make sure that I don't get myself locked into something I'm not sure of.
So the R1 district is just primarily for residential, but a use like gardening is certainly an ancillary use that you wouldn't need any kind of a permit for, or anything of that nature. Now, you want to put a pig out there, that might be a different thing.
No. Got enough of that going up.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? Okay, nobody else being here, hearing nobody else. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chair. Hi, this is Valeria Thomas. I think the planning director notified me, I think, of a scrivener's error in this item, and it should not be an RL, it should be R1 designation.
Zoning.
Is that true, Ms. Fisher?
Okay. So what do we need to do as far as, we don't need to do anything corrective on our end, do we? Just to make sure that you correct it with what you're doing? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions or any discussion with the board?
No.
Okay, hearing none, do I hear of,
So you have three separate items that will be on the city commission's agenda, Mr. Chairman. One would be the annexation, which is taking the property from the county into the city. The second would be the comprehensive plan, a modification or amendment to our comprehensive plan, because we're now taking in property that we didn't formerly have. And then the third would be the zoning. So there'll be three separate items that'll be on the agenda for the city commission. So if you agree that the property is susceptible to annexation, and really the only strict requirement for annexation is that it be contiguous to property that's already in the city, which staff indicates it is. If you agree, and the gentleman had already indicated that he's looking to annex primarily for the purpose of being able to connect the water and sewer, Of course, from the city's perspective, we're anxious to do whatever we can to make our boundaries more consistent. So where there's property like this that's, on the fringe, the city's policy is generally in favor of recommending that. So the annexation will be the first question. Then the property is coming in under our comprehensive plan, which, as you know, has a future land use element that sort of makes a map of how we think the area should develop. It's coming in as residential, which is normally considered to be a unoffensive or non-offensive land use. It's not compared to, not saying that commercial and industrial is offensive, but depending upon where it is, it can be not compatible to the adjoining areas. But he's asking to come in as residential, R1 single family. And then the comprehensive plan would be amended for residential. Our comprehensive plan would be amended to have this parcel be shown as residential. And then he's asking for the R1 zoning. Those three separate issues.
So we have to have three different motions.
I would suggest that.
Haven't we always, like the annexation and the change in zoning, we usually annex it in as that R1A rather than do 3? Don't we do 2? I'm just asking.
I mean, I assume we could do it as 2. Trying to think of the passage requirements at the ordinance level. I think there we do it as 3 because I believe, but if your recommendation is for the R1 zoning and the annexation, then we'll make it work in terms of the way the ordinances read when they go in front of the city commission.
Ms. Thomas, do you have any idea how we need to make those motions?
Let's do 3 just for simplicity.
I'm not hearing her.
I heard Mr. Barnes.
I'm sorry, my mic was muted. Yes, we need to make 3 separate recommendations for each of the annexation, the future land use, and for just escaping right then, and comprehensive plan so that we can move it forward. And then it'll be 2 hearings before the board, the city commission.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thomas.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we just need to just start doing them one at a time?
Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Is there a motion for the annex?
I will motion. You got me messed up now. I motion to approve the request to annex approximately the 0.36 acre property into the city.
Second.
There's a
Per
motion.
staff's recommendation.
There's a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. For the future land or the future land use process, do I hear a motion?
Go ahead. I motion to amend the future land use map from Putnam County Urban Service to City of Palatka Residential.
Is there a second?
Per staff.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Motion for the comp plan.
I'm sorry, sir, it's the rezoning.
It's the
Rezoning from Putnam County Agriculture.
I motion to approve the rezoning from
Okay, I wrote
Putnam,
it down wrong. Sorry.
from Putnam County from Ag to City of Palatka Single Family District R1A per staff recommendations.
Motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. And if you grow any tomatoes in that garden, I got a sample.
Tomato, peas, and greens.
Ooh,
That's good enough.
okay.
Okay, moving on to ordinances. Case PB 20-40 or 04. Discussion regarding ordinance amending section 94-261 of the municipal code pertaining to the location of parking facilities for existing residential structures.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Don Holmes, city manager, formerly city attorney, and let me, if I could, explain what this is and where we're going with this. Presently, the city of Palatka Code of Ordinances has two provisions in it that have become a topic of discussion. The first one is that you can't park in any front yard under our ordinances. The second is you can't park in it doesn't term it right away, but it's talking about the right of way. It defines it as the area between the travel way of the street and the property line, which is right of way. You can't park there. So when the repaving of some portions of the South Side Historic District began, and as the paving was in process, it was obvious that some people were parking in the right of way, not in paved spots or in designated spots, but just in the right of way because they had no ability to get to the backyard because they had a lot that was narrow enough with no side vacant area. They couldn't drive by their house to get to the backyard. Our ordinance prohibits parking in the front yard. So the only place they had to park was on the street or on the right of way. The streets in these areas were 16 feet wide. So if you had people parking in the street, some would say it was a safety issue. I don't consider myself a traffic engineer, but it certainly is at least an obstacle in a 16-foot wide roadway. So no good, this falls under the heading of no good deed goes unpunished. As the contractors were over there were 3 houses that fell into the category of having no side yard. You couldn't get by the house to get to the backyard, and they had no driveway, and you can't park in the front yard. So it was thought that we might improve the area by allowing a single space parking that was aesthetically pleasing, either bricked or concrete or something of that nature, single space in the right of way in front of just those houses to give them someplace to park beside the street. In the course of that, in some fashion or another, a 4th house managed to get a pad poured, and it does have a garage, and it does have some place for vehicles to be parked, which set off calls, complaints from people in the South Side Historic District. So looking at the code, and this was not an issue that was brought to my attention before the complaints. It was after the complaints. But after looking at the code, I found the prohibition against front yard parking and the prohibition against right-of-way parking. So my thought was, okay, look, personally, from a staff perspective, it wasn't something that I had a strong position on either way. I mean, I wasn't trying to advocate either side. But it sounded like a good policy matter, since there were a number of people who objected to having any right-of-way parking in the South Side Historic District. There were a number of people who objected to that. My suggestion was, well, let's draft an ordinance that makes it clear that you can't park in the right-of-way unless, because of the configuration of your lot, it's not possible for you to park in the backyard. You don't have a driveway, you don't have a garage, and then you can seek a variance from the planning board after input from the Historic Preservation Board. I was trying to cover all bases. But before we could even, I have that ordinance drafted, but before we could even get that far, then more issues arose in that it was brought to my attention, somebody has requested the ability to pour a parking pad as sort of addition to a driveway on River Street, on a property on River Street from the old Florida Furniture. I can't tell you the address, but it's from the whole Ford, near Tim Smith's old house. And my initial impression was, well, our ordinance says you can't park in the front yard. the driveway. But then it was brought to my attention that the adjoining house has a parking area in the front yard. So at that point, it became clear to me that this thing just needed to be vetted some. As I said, I don't have a house or property in the historic district. I have no strong feeling one way or the other. From the calls I've gotten, I will tell you that there are people who have strong feelings both ways, on both sides of the issue. So all we were doing, it was my intent today to do was to say, this is going to come to you soon, but I'm going to take it to the Historic Preservation Board first. We're going to take it to the Historic Preservation Board first and let them weigh in. And then after they weighed in, we're going to bring it to you. And
All right, so I'm muted. Now what?
Who
Is
that
that
was?
you, Jonathan?
That was Peter Russo.
Well, let's mute all of the callers right now, okay? Then after the Historic Preservation Board and you have weighed in with recommendation, we're gonna put it in front of the City Commission, and whatever the legislators decide will be the way it goes. So that's all today was about. We're not asking you to vote on anything. You can be thinking about it. But as this issue has grown, it became apparent to me. I spoke with Jonathan just this week and said, look, I think maybe the best thing for us to do is just let them vet it at the Historic Preservation Board first, and then bring it to the Planning Commission, and then City Commission can make a decision. That's where we are. So
Was that additional one, was it permitted?
the one that's already in place,
You said there was one down near Tim's old house.
it's old, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know when it was put in. I don't know if it was done by way of a permit. I have no idea. It's just that the new one did seek permission. The new person did seek permission to, and you know what I'm talking about when I say there's a driveway leading to a garage area, and they wanted to add a side pad where they could park. Well, technically that's parking in the front yard. So my initial impression was, well, that's parking in the front yard. And then they said, yeah, but the house right next to it has exactly that. So it's obvious that there's been, and then there's not, I don't know that there's been a consistent policy applied in the past. So I don't want to, I think it's something that the board should sorry to take your time with it, but I think that's the simplest and the most fair thing for us to do is let the boards that are weighing in on these topics say what they have to say, and then we can go in whatever direction you'd like. But it was never our intent to simply allow carte blanche the parking in the right of way. But we did think, and I'll admit that this was part of my thought. I thought that a single space bricked turnoff into the right of way in limited circumstances with a variance from the planning board, which could consider all factors, where it is, what's around it, that kind of thing. Sounded like it was a decent idea, but it doesn't sound like a decent idea to everybody, obviously. So that's where we are.
Don't you think the historic board is going to hash it out before it ever gets done?
Well, but you're the ones that have the duty to make a recommendation to the commission technically, and we're talking about an ordinance change. And it involves a land use, in my opinion. It involves change to the land use codes. So I think that you have, I think under our code, it's your privilege and responsibility to make a recommendation. If you just decide that whatever the Historic Preservation Board decided was what you want to do, then as I said, I have no strong feelings about this one way or the other from a practical perspective. I mean, I understand if you go back 100 years, they didn't have them, but 100 years ago, they had horses walking up and down the street. So, we have cars now. Some of the cars, especially if you got a truck, it's a little bit wide. My thought was just nighttime rain. You got somebody opening their door into a lane of traffic on a 16-foot wide street. I thought there was a potential safety issue there, but
Are all the streets on the South Side Historic District 16 feet wide? The ones that have been repaved?
Honestly, I can't tell you that.
The ones that have been repaved are varying width, curb to curb, are varying widths.
Now, when they repaved them, they redid the curbs?
Yeah, in most cases.
Okay.
I mean, they're everything's kind of hush hush. But Jonathan will know, they basically redid the curbs and they're varying widths. Like some of them are quite wide, but the old brick streets where you had the granite curb, and the bricks, they were approximately 16 feet. You know, enough for 2 Model A's to go by.
So,
I mean, part of living in a downtown historic district is the charm of not having, you know, a Bubba truck in the front yard, you know, and not having it pulled up halfway on the sidewalk. It's the charm of looking at the historic houses. People put a lot of money that live downtown.
From a real
in
estate
their houses. From
perspective,
the real estate, yeah.
but you gotta have a place to park.
You do have to have a place to park, so.
Where I live, you got restrictions. You can't park a car. During business hours, you can park one in your driveway. Otherwise, you put it in the garage, you know. That's just the way it's done. And you don't park them in the front yard, or somebody will probably burn them or steal them. 'Cause we don't like them all over the front yard.
I have.
Who was that?
do we not have the ability to mute the?
Every time I mute, he unmutes himself.
Or
Sounded like you said, damn.
Earl, Edie, and y'all were, I think y'all the only ones here today, besides you being the attorney, when we did the bed and breakfast and did the
Same thing.
the special parking there. Do y'all remember how we did that?
I don't, but I know it's compatible. It's brick pavers.
Right.
It fits in with the place very well, and you know, I've never
And it's in
even
the
thought about
right
it being
away.
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And it
again,
looks attractive. You're just, you know,
Mr. Holmes, your
It can be.
suggestion was to let the historic district come up with the verbiage, correct? And then we either approve, deny, or.
well, it seems like there's 3 trains of thought right now. One is, don't let them park. If they don't have a driveway that goes to a garage, they got to park on the street. That's one train of thought. No exceptions. So you may not have a Bubba truck in the front yard, but you got a Bubba truck in the street in front of the front yard. And that is what it is, because if it's just not realistic to think that people are going to park 3 blocks away and walk home. You can think that if you want to, but it's not realistic. That's one school of thought. One school of thought is, in general, prohibit it, but where the construction, location, and site plan of the home makes it impossible to get to the backyard, and there is no garage on the house, then rather than park in the front yard or on the street, let them have a single space parking pad with the aesthetics of it being approved by the Historic Preservation Board. That was what my ordinance had, but it was only going to be for those properties that had no ability to access the garage or the backyard.
That hardship was created back in the 1800s.
Exactly. It's not something they did yesterday. That was my thinking of it anyway. And then the last train of thought is, let anybody who wants to park in the right of way, and let them put pads there if they want to. Those are the 3. So the ordinance I had drafted was the middle approach. But as I said, we have found quickly that there are people who are on both of the ends. You know, let anybody park there who wants to in the right of way, wherever they want to, or don't let anybody park in the right of way or the yard, make anybody park on the street that's there. So because of that, because it was obvious we were going to offend somebody no matter what, I thought the best to let the boards that were comprised, let them hear it out and make a recommendation. As I said, from a staff perspective, I have no strong preference. I mean, it's what it is.
Everybody out there didn't just buy a car. I mean, they've been taking care of it on a very agreeable basis between them all. And now,
I mean, if they've got to pull a permit to, you know, and if it falls under, I can't pull in the backyard, I can't pull in my garage, I don't have a driveway, my house wasn't built with a garage, then I think it should be an option and have it to, you know, historically appealing, like, you know, the bed and breakfast did a nice job on theirs.
Yeah.
Pavers.
Our naive thought was a nice, aesthetically attractive, single spot for parking was preferable to what was happening, which was just driving over the curb and parking in the right of way. It was happening. But again, I don't really care. When I say I don't care, all I care about is that we do it the right way and that's done fairly. So that's why I thought let the HPB hear it first, and then let you guys hear it, and I'll make a recommendation, whatever the commission decides, I'm good with, we'll apply it.
When it goes to the historical board, you know, for them to hash it out, they need to look at agreements between adjoining owners to get a common one going into the backyard, and that would take care of a lot of it.
Earl, how long have you dealt with adjoining property owners?
60, 50.
Yeah, well, I don't know what your experience has been, but I don't always find adjoining property owners to be agreeable. So,
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying.
I do. So that's what it's all, it was just meant to let you guys know something was coming down the pipe. That's all. At one point where I think I naively thought we could put this in front of you guys. The calls started coming in and I said, okay, let's vet it all the way through.
Well, I'm a little interested to know whether these properties are rental properties, because that's where a lot of the times you get in the problems, because they don't care. You know, they're just renting and they're going to just park. That's what I find, you know.
Is a decision being made today, though?
No,
You
no,
want
that's
something
good.
from
That's
today?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, just wondering,
At this
'cause
point, I'd like to hear
Yep.
from some of the people that
You bet.
own property, that pay taxes in this
Yeah,
area, aesthetically, you know?
that's why I said I want it fully vetted.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Do you happen to know a date from the historic board's going to review this?
We're gonna, I believe that what we have done is try to schedule one in the first part of December, a special call meeting of the Historic Preservation Board the first part of December, and have it agendaed, have it on the, have it noticed, have it.
Can we have an email to the board members?
Sure.
So we can attend and listen?
Absolutely.
Are we allowed as a group to attend that way?
We're allowed individually.
yeah, we shouldn't go as a group.
Bring us back lunch.
You're not supposed to talk, you're not supposed to confer or discuss, but sure, there's nothing that prohibits you from
Yeah, just
attending.
come and listen.
Yeah, because, you know, somewhere back years ago, it got so restrictive here. When we replied to our email saying, are you going to be at the meeting such and such a date? You couldn't reply all, so everybody
No.
knew.
Well,
because
that's still what the guidelines from Tallahassee tell us, that you should never reply all, because that's considered a communication outside the sunshine.
But we're okay to all go.
You're not communicating there. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't listen.
Yeah.
Don't
So
voice an
you-
opinion.
you
don't
don't
voice
listen.
So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Okay, we'll move on now to administrative reports.
I get no opportunity to speak here.
Mr. Russo, this is just an informative type thing to us. There's nothing really to speak on.
Well, normally I would have a little yellow card. I could speak to the issue.
We did. at the
Tell him we're
beginning
not
of-
We already did the public speaking at the beginning.
Telling
Ms.
you, it's not the
Thomas,
historical
Would
board.
you rule on that for me, please?
Yes, sir, I agree with you, Mr. Killebrew. Mr. Russo, you will be given an opportunity, and as the manager said, we're going to schedule this before the Historic Preservation Board. You will have an opportunity to appear there and to give your comments. We've also read your comments that you put in the chat into the record, so you have had an opportunity to speak. And Mr. Killebrew, you can proceed.
Thank you, Ms.
The
Thomas.
woman talking, Ms. Thomas?
She's our new attorney.
Is that a new attorney? Okay.
Yes.
Did he say former attorney or
No.
current city manager? Is what
He's
Don
a
Holmes
current city manager,
Current city
former
manager.
attorney.
Got it.
Yes.
But
Ms. Thomas is our
the lady who
current-
just spoke is our current.
Right.
City manager.
No,
City
City attorney.
The woman that just spoke.
Yeah,
Yes.
the
Right.
attorney,
Yes,
Don is the man.
Dawn is the manager.
Correct.
Yes.
Thomas.
We got that confusion straightened out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, again, we go to administrative reports. Is there any? None at this time? This time, okay. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, I would like a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
So moved.
I want everybody to take note, Liam has made himself